Welcome to the Lovecars on the Grid podcast, your global motorsport roundup with me, Tiff, Needell and Paul Woodman.
Welcome to Lovecars on the Grid, your global motorsport podcast roundup, where we look back on a proper Max Masterclass amongst Brazilian chaos. Advantage Martin in Malaysia, the MotoGP. Toyota seal the WEC manufacturer's crown in Bahrain, and a controversial tied points result is settled by the stewards in NASCAR. But I think, forget the news, let's go into one of the most incredible Formula One weekends ever in Brazil, Sao Paulo.
What a weekend!
I mean, where do we start? Because of course there was a sprint race as well. There was rain. There was everything you could possibly wish for.
I mean, just the headlines began in free practice one on the Friday, because of course there's only one free practice when you have a sprint weekend, and I like that. It gives less chance of the big teams to sort things out. Because after the free practice one, and Lando Norris was first, and George Russell was second, and Ollie Bearman checklist was third fastest. Having been woken up early that morning to say that poor old K-Mag was sick, and you're in the Haas. I just think this kid's incredible. We'll talk about him later in the weekend as well. But there he was, your third fastest in FP1. The Haas has been going well recently because K-Mag and Hulk were both up in the top 10.
But still, you've got to do it. Never driven around a circuit before.
I know. He was 0.3 fast. Hulkenberg was 8th in that session. Alex Albon was 5th. Once again, Albon keeps on promising a great weekend for Williams. Would this be the one? And Max was 15th and Perez 19th. And I don't know what was going on with them. I think Max had a quick lap on super softs, but on softs, and then didn't finish it. Perez, of course, you'd expect to be 19th nowadays. So weird timings. And the sprint qualifying is all back to normal. McLaren 1-2. Well, Piastri just tipped Lando, who'd been quickest all weekend. Ferrari's 3rd and 5th. Max, of course, bouncing back to be 4th in quali for the sprint race. So things looked as though life was getting back to normal. We still had Albon and Bearman in the top 10. They were 9th and 10th. And we still, of course, had Perez dropping out after Q2. 13th, Checo. So then we thought, and the sprint race was pretty normal, to be honest. It was a McLaren formation out front. Then there was a safety car, wasn't there? Because Hulkenberg broke down or something, and so they had to quickly swap before the safety. It would be embarrassing if they hadn't swapped Piastri before the safety car came out. I think it ran to the end in it almost, or maybe they raced a few laps. I can't remember, but they could have been caught by a safety car to the finish line. That would have meant they couldn't sprint it. So there we are. Lando's catching up. Max. It's all going to be exciting. The championship is opening up. Nothing much. I don't know who else finished where in the sprint. I can't remember. Ollie did well in the person 8th or 9th, and then he overdid his tyres. I mean, he's learning all the time. He was just out there having a hell of a good time learning. So that all went quite calmly until it came to Saturday afternoon after the sprint race, when the heavens opened and they couldn't qualify. So that put everything off, and everyone was hanging around, and Ted was going round and round with his notebook talking out of bollocks about things. But
that gets so boring now, by the way. Yeah, I used to quite enjoy a little bit of, but it's too much. It's just too much.
Yeah, Crofty, yeah, Maxie, yeah, Matey, yeah, Mopey. So then we came to the Saturday. So they had to have the Saturday morning qualifying, and that was just chaos. I mean, it was raining, it was wet, it was horrible. Hamilton went out in Q1, 16th. And Ollie Bearman, the Haas was obviously no good in the wet, because they were both. Ollie was 19th, was it? Can't remember where he ended up. 17th, but he's still 0.4 ahead of Hulk, who's 19th. So again, even in the wet, I think it was his first time out in the Grand Prix car in the wet, and he still beat his teammate. So that was the story of Q1. Really was Hamilton going out. Then Q2, there was all the problem at the end when Stroll crashed. There had been red flags earlier. I think there had been 2 red flags.
There were 5 red flags in total.
Q2, I know.
Incredible.
So Max was sitting in 12th or something, was going round to warm up for a fast lap when Stroll crashes. It looked like he was trying to move the car to get going, and the red didn't come out immediately, and everyone's moaning Red Bull are up in arms and Horner's shouting at everybody and we should have had a red flag and then Max would have got out and done another lap. But Karun this time, Anthony Davidson, Karun equal to Anthony in sorting out these things, had his big board come out and said, no, time, stopped it, time on the clock. Even if a red flag had gone out immediately, Max wouldn't have had time to go around and do another lap and fresh. So it wouldn't have happened anyway, according to Karun's very well sorted things. Carlos Sainz went out in Q2, didn't he, as well? It was just a funny weekend. It was just where have I write up? The final one, of course, we had the Q3, more red flags. It made 5, because Alonso crashed, Stroll crashed, and Albon then had this massive shunt. And you have to, I don't know, he just seems to get involved. It was that same turn 1 where he was squeezed into the wall at the start of the race last year, wasn't it? We qualified quite well. Then it was Mexico, he clashed at the first corner with Yuki. And the damage they're doing to these poor Williams on a budget, is just horrendous. And, he said, did my brakes fail? But, on board, he was on the white line. And this, we all talk about it and all the Grand Prix times talk about it,
Absolutely. As a driver, you get on the white line, it's like ice. You can't brake on it.
But I think he can't have known he was on it. I think this looking through the corner, you're braking and you use your peripheral. That's the way they teach young drivers now. I'm very much a look down, check a bit, look down, check a bit, sort of go vary from the looking down to the looking through. But there is an obsession with this looking through. And he just wandered a bit to the right. And when he hit the brakes, the rear's locked, and it was like a handbrake coming on.
Yeah.
Huge shunt. So I had to feel so sorry for him. But throughout all this chaos, then we had Lando got pole from George Russell. George once again battling away as much as he can. Well, I don't know whether the different setups had took with Lewis. I didn't hear about, but Lewis was just nowhere all weekend.
Wasn't happy, was he?
No, but it's bouncing too much, but no grip. I always love these Formula One drivers at the top of their game that come on the road and say, I've got no grip. I know they mean they're lacking grip. No grip, no brakes. They do exaggerate slightly. And then we had this sight of Yuki Tsunoda, 3rd. And then even more surprising, Ocon, 4th. So it is amazing how, sometimes a not so good car comes good in the wet and vice versa. But Alpine 4th. Lawson 5th, and the other Red Bulls, RBs. RBs were 3 and 5. Leclerc 6. It was such a weird. It
was so strange, and like you said, Sainz out, Verstappen out, and Sainz won the last Grand Prix. This bloody cat. For those who are watching us, I'm trying to get rid of this cat. I'm at my friend's office.
Well, you can leave it there. It's adding to the. It's adding to the feed.
It's already scratched me.
Well, ignore it.
I love cats. I'm just trying. No, I love cats. I love all animals. But he's trying to get on the laptop. That's the problem. Yeah, it was a very, very strange grid. Very strange grid. Of course, Albon sadly didn't make it onto the grid. We a star cat at the end of this show. Nicely framed there. Albon didn't get out. They couldn't repair his car. There was so much damage to it. And of course, Colapinto also crashed. One of the other red flags, I think it was, not quite so hard, but they got his car out. There were several starts from the pit lane, which I'm not sure. I haven't got a list of who was there because so much rebuilding was going on. And then, of course, we had the Lance Stroll show. There we are, all getting ready for this exciting Grand Prix start, and they're all coming round. And all of a sudden, the shot of Lance nosed into the wall on the outlap on his intermediates. But when the first corner he came to after coming out the pits, wasn't it, down the back straight? The worst thing ever. I've seen it a couple of times where on an outlap, on a formation lap, they're crash. But then, to add insult to injury, tried to spin it around and he beached himself in the gravel. But he didn't try and spin it round. He didn't. He tried to go over the gravel, didn't he? And turned, and then he just happily drove into a gravel track. Why not just plant your foot do another turn? Do another turn. Yeah. Well, we could have tried a spin turn or reversed it again, but to drive into a gravel track. It's so bizarre. It's almost like, I don't want to be here. I'm going to just do this. And then all the kerfuffle, all the drama on the start line. Did they do the right procedure? Did they do the wrong procedure? I've ignored. I've got a note halfway down here saying penalties. I mean, there were penalties for tyre pressures for Mercedes. There were penalties for grid positions. There were penalties for
too many things. I mean, I just can't be bothered. I just left. I ignored it. I said there won't be any penalties. Let's get on with the race. Then, of course, the race we had Russell out dragging Lando.
Why is Lando so bad at starts? I think he's had poles 6-7 times, and he's only led once, maybe twice on the first corner out of all those times.
So it was a bit of a shame for Lando. He was then stuck, and then sort of they were quite quickly about 9 seconds behind the lead too, but not falling any further back. So it's quite weird. They're all all doing the same time. So the Yuki train. Yuki got third, Ocon fourth, Leclerc fifth, and Lawson sixth after the first turn. And they all just seemed to be quite static, nothing really happening at all. And they weren't falling back from the front two. Then, of course, we had the big fuss, of course, made about Max going from 17th to 11th on the lap one, which I expect because Max now is in his element. And the whole race, and what we see about Max, where you start, we talked about the way he overtakes in the dry and upsets people because he's got this ability to brake later and not lock tires. He's got such a sensitive skill on his brakes. Of course, when it comes to the wet, this is multiplied by 10. So he was able to dive bomb people into turn one, which nobody else dared do, and still not lock the tires up.
But you've got to put it in perspective. These are the best drivers in the world. You've got 19 of the best drivers in the world, and Max is still significantly better than them.
But nobody else tried to overtake. I mean, nobody else tried overtakes. But whilst we all raved about Max, people didn't rave about missed out slightly. It was Gasly, because Gasly in the other Alpine was 13th on the grid and got to 9th. So he was one of the ones that Max overtook. But Gasly also made a brilliant first lap, which ended up with him being on the podium at the end. So
and interesting, you see this a lot in wet racing. There are no accidents on the first lap. First corner, first lap.
People are a bit more careful.
Exactly.
More careful, yeah. They don't. Yeah. They can't risk running close to each other because they need a bit of slide room, But Max, he quickly got up to 6th, took 6th off Lawson. Then he was at the back of the Yuki train. And even he then, with people a bit, faster than the ones he'd overtaken more easily, he couldn't overtake anyone. Lando was on the radio saying, well, I'm too slow in a straight line, I can't. It was actually sort of becoming a bit of a dull race. Everyone seemed sort of stuck.
See, I didn't think it was dull because you knew the weather was coming in. You knew it was so changeable. I didn't feel it was dull.
We'll come to that, the new changeable, because that, of course, was the controversy all begins, or the complaints from me. We had the entertainment of Perez spinning on lap one, of course. We say people weren't crazy on lap one, but Checo managed to drop himself into the dirt. So they're all sitting there and they're all wearing out their intermediates, weren't they? They're all beginning to make. I've got no grip. None of them had any grip. We've got no grip.
Oh.
But the rain's coming. Yeah, hold on a minute. The rain's coming. But then we had it eventually. The top 3 or 4, whatever, pitted for fresh intermediates because they were fed up with them being worn out. But they all knew they all had to change. So basically, all the strategists are saying we've all got to change at some time.
You could hear the nervousness in the engineers' voices every time they did because they didn't know.
But some drivers, Yuki, Lawson, I think Perez, put the wets on. Now this is where I start my soapbox because we never raced with these bloody wet tyres, and they're just so scared of them. So because all the drivers are moaning, I've got no grip. As soon as the rain came, the stewards go, oh, the rain's here, it's slippery, there might be puddles. Put the safety car out. It ruined them. And for people like Yuki and Lawson and Perez that were on the wets, they were going 7 seconds a lap faster on the wets.
So they took a chance, they took a gamble, they took the right
and it was taken away from them because, other teams were still moaning about aquaplaning and then, of course, Colapinto went out on a new set of intermediates and had this massive shunt. Which brought out the red flag. But it goes back to they should never have put the safety car out in the first bloody place. Make them decide. Nobody had fallen off the road. There wasn't that much aquaplaning. I mean, yes, the stewards will say, well, there was about to be a huge crash if we didn't put... But they still crashed. I mean, they should have made the drivers go onto wets.
He crashed under a safety car.
I know, trying to catch up the queue, I guess, which is a bit naughty. You shouldn't really do that, but I felt sorry for him. I felt more sorry for Williams.
Oh, poor Williams. Their damage bill over the last few races, my goodness.
But no, they should never have had that safety car. It's a real shame. And of course, there is this, then we come in with the red flag ruling where you could all change tyres. which nobody likes, but nobody
They've
wants
got to change it. I can't.
Yeah, but it's
stand
because you might have driven over carbon bits. It's a safety. It's yet another safety.
Look, you win some, you lose some,
aspect.
don't you? Some.
Yeah, but
if your favorite
someone
driver,
if someone had a tire blowout because he had a bit of carbon in his tires from going over the red flag crash, who's who's responsible then?
Okay, what's an average pit stop? 22 seconds. Just say if you need any work done in the pit during the red flag, it's a 30-second penalty.
If you want to change your tires,
yeah,
something like that. Well, it's something like that. I don't like pitting under virtual safety cars.
No, I don't either.
They shouldn't be allowed in.
No, I agree.
Because a virtual safety car is never a long thing. Normally, it's only 3 or 4 laps because it's not a big incident. So you just can't pit for those 4 laps.
Yeah.
Because that annoys me, gaining 10 seconds because you happen to be in the right place on the track. So the other interesting thing, though, before the safety car came out, we had this period when Ocon, Max and Gaz were the ones that didn't pit on their tired intermediates. And Max couldn't do anything about Ocon's lead. So Max was all of a sudden stuck, surprisingly, behind Ocon.
Ocon pulled out 2.5, nearly 3 seconds on him.
Yeah, pulled away from him. So
I think a bit of that must be being the front runner with the huge amounts of spray coming off.
Well, and the aero and the air. Yeah. You haven't got aero with wets. I presume really that dirty air probably affects you more on wets because you've already got not a lot of grip. And if you lose a little bit more of your not a lot of grip, following is a problem. Which is why it was a processional race. That's what I would say. Nobody was able to take it anyone. It was very drawn out and very long. Incredible concentration by all of them, just to stay on the flipping track. But then, of course, given a restart and fresh intermediates, Max was on the attack on the restart and did Ocon. And that was sort of the end of the race and pulled away. So, meanwhile, Lando was flailing about. He made a couple of mistakes and he dropped back. He ended up in 3rd, 4th, ended up 6th behind George. He came out ahead of George for the pit stops, but fell off. There was lots of locking up, falling off by other drivers, but not by Max and the Alpines. Because Yuki hung on to 7th, Piastri 8th. Piastri had another, apart from that one lap in Q, whatever it was, for the sprint race, for pole for the sprint race, when he beat Lando. He didn't move forward at all. Nobody really moved forward except Max and Gasly. Gasly did an amazing job.
Has to be the drive of the deck. I can't think of a better drive. I mean, it's up there with Senna and Donington. What year was that? 93. It was phenomenal. It's phenomenal.
It's just a shame that the safety car came. So whereas the famous Senna first lap and the Senna win at Donington was a whole race, and they pitted about 5 times with tires. He kept on drying out and getting wetter. They were going in and out of Donington. I remember saying
you're right. He had some luck, but it was still a phenomenal drive from Max, and it showed how classy he is. You look at Perez. Look, he's so far down.
But it's a shame that I think Lando today was saying he was lucky. It's just a shame that the Max Masterclass is sort of slightly tarred by the red flag and the safety car. I think he would have won it anyway, probably.
Yeah, I called on lap 1. I'll be honest with you. I called on lap 1. Matt's going to win this.
But he was stuck behind Ocon. He was stuck in the train. He was stuck in 6th place, going nowhere.
Lando, considering Lando really always stays on the fence, especially with Max. And I thought it was really rude. It's just an unnecessary remark that it wasn't talent, it was luck. No, it wasn't. It wasn't. And then, but Lewis on the other side, and was incredibly complimentary. Said that's probably the best race in history, which probably wasn't Lewis, but he said, well,
it won't
Max
be the best race. It won't be the best race in history because of the bloody safety car and the red flag.
Yeah, which is a shame.
Might have been. So it's slightly, and then for Max and the press saying, "Where's the British press gone?" Did you see that?
He said, "Where the British press? They've all got the plane home early, have they?" But Max, you've got to understand, you bend the rules to your advantage. So obviously, people all around the world are going to pull you up on it. Yeah. We can't just say, you get away with whatever you want to do, because that's not how it works. You've got to pull you up on it.
Ollie Bear, we'll just finish off with Ollie Bear.
He had a stinker, bless him.
Because he finished to me. He was off the grass twice. He was on the lawn. Yeah, but he was up to about 12th, I think, early on. Then he was off on the grass. Oh, no, he hit Colapinto, didn't he? When he got caught out when Colapinto didn't go where he thought. He
had a race to forget.
Well, not in a way, because he came back to finish 12th. He was trying to go around the outside of Lewis Hamilton. He spun off and touched the barrier. Then he caught them all up again. And he finished 12th, I think.
You imagine for these guys, Lawson, Colapinto, who else was the rookie that was there? Who else was racing as a rookie? But these guys are literally
Ollie and Colapinto, Lawson.
but they're racing against Lewis Hamilton for position.
Yeah.
I mean, they must be pinching themselves as they're driving. Right, I've got a message for Toto and for Christian Horner. I think my advice would be to them: drop Lewis. That's very controversial. Drop Lewis, get in Kimi for the last 3 races, and obviously drop Checo and get in Liam Lawson for the last 3 races. Why not? Lewis is doing nothing.
Who's going in the RB then?
It doesn't matter, does it? Don't come to me with those trivial points.
The only news is apparently Bortoletto is getting closer to the Sauber ride. I've read.
Okay, let's demote Perez to the RB. Lewis has a gardening leave.
Would you like to speak to my lawyer? I have Mr. Perez, my client here. He has a thing called a contract, sir. Would you like to speak to him about this idea of yours?
I think it's a really good idea. Why not get in Kimi Antonelli now instead of Lewis Hamilton? What's Lewis going to do?
Lovely idea. It's a dreamy idea.
Why not?
Work.
Why not?
Won't work.
Oh, okay.
It's no good. So anyway, it looks like Max now is going to get that. We all thought he was going to win the driver's title, but I think the Lando chase is pretty much over.
Lando. He says very derogatory about Max, and he said all those things for so many years about Lewis and anyone can win in the fastest car. Lando, you're in the fastest car. You're not winning. So it's just you got to have that balance of respect, I think, because everyone respects him and everybody wants him to win and do well. Well, I do anyway, but it's got to go 2 ways.
I don't know, but plenty of entertainment, but actually not enough racing, and that is because of no DRS. This is what racing would be like if they didn't have DRS. It was a bit like that. Just no overtaking, apart from Max, a couple of other moments. So
an amazing Sao Paulo Grand Prix.
Yeah. And while Max is nearing his championship down in Malaysia, it looks like Jorge Martín is getting closer and closer to make it because Frankie Bagnaia, the champion at the moment, his factory Ducati, managed to drop it again in the sprint race, running second.
So it's only him
behind Jorge Martín.
Pecco and Martin.
Well,
really.
Pecco Bagnaia, but Martin, now they've dropped the gap. The gap's about 24 points. I think it's 25 for a Grand Prix win and 12 for a sprint win. So it's a pretty long shot for Bagnaia now.
Yeah.
And it's a dull sprint race. The track didn't seem to really this great track. And the trouble is, I've driven around that Sepang track, built for Grand Prix cars, made by Tilke, and I'll talk a bit more about it later. And those hairpins are so tight because Formula One cars, could go. They need such a tight hairpin, so they've got a decent braking zone. In a road car, it's the most ridiculously tight hairpin, and it's just that slow. They're down in first gear on quite a heavy bike, leant over, and the front just folds underneath. So the sprint was won by Martin to extend his championship lead. Martin Marquez was second in the sprint from Bastianini on the other factory Ducati. There's the same culprits in every race. Unfortunately, Marquez then crashed out of the Grand Prix, trying too hard on his 23 Ducati, not as quick as a 24 Ducati, which actually helped Bagnaia because the Grand Prix itself, we had 5 laps, the most amazing, scary, dicey I've seen for a long, long time. With Martin apparently not content with second place. You would have thought he's got a big championship lead. He'd happily let Bagnaia win. But he was over everything. So they were just lunging, elbowing. I mean, the most incredible 5 laps before Bagnaia sort of dominated the race, slightly pulled away, and Martin gave up. Marquez then crashed out. He could have overtaken Martin, helped the points for his future teammate, but he wasn't able to do so. So Bastianini came third. But going back to the track, they had this horrible, horrible crash at turn 2. And I say this forever, S-bends do not have an S-bend at the first corner. Interlagos the same, because they all go round turn 1, sort of 3 wide and 2 wide. But then, of course, the next one's even tighter. Interlagos, in fact, I think the right is a bit quicker than the opening left, which is part of my rule book of designing a track. But And this Tilke design in Malaysia, there's this long first turn right where you can keep part of momentum, and then almost immediately a really sharp left. And it was Moto3.
Where's like that in the UK? Croft, isn't it? Is it Croft that's a bit like that? First turn?
None of that. Any S-bend or chicane, the second element should be quicker than the first element, and the third element should be quicker than the second element. So it's the slowest initially, and then you can gradually take speed away.
What I would like to see is a map from you of the perfect racetrack, please. I want your ex-civil engineer.
One of the files somewhere. I've got the turn one anyway. Should be a long wide.
Let's discuss, and we'll put it on Twitter, and we'll have a chat about it when there's no racing, no Formula One, and we'll go through it.
But there are so many accidents to that turn. Even in Formula One, there's so many wings knocked off. Going into that turn two. It's just a stupid corner to design because it looks pretty on the map. Oh, that will sort them out. Because Moto3, we had 3 kids on top of each other, because they all clashed.
It's not just bikes, it's not Formula One, it's every single motor series there is. Club racing, everything. And you dread it. You go into a corner like that and you dread it.
I mean, poor old Jack Miller had his legs run over. He was one of the ones. Brad Binder, Jack Miller, 2 KTM factory bikes, and Fabio Quartararo. Oh, Fabio Quartararo is having a good weekend. The Yamaha is getting better, actually. He was 5th in the sprint, and he managed to get a spare bike and ride after the crash, started the Grand Prix, and finished 6th. So he was having a good time on his Yamaha. But that stupid S-bend, it's dangerous. You could charge the track. I mean, just tell them to change the circuit. Moto3 kids, I say, also had the same problem. Moto2 didn't. Celestino Vietti won. Actually, it was quite a good story, Moto2, because this kid, he's not a kid, he's about 28-year-old, Jorge Navarro. He's had 6 years of Moto2. In the 6 years he did them, he hasn't had no wins. But he's had 10 podiums, so he's been up there. But he hasn't got a ride this year. But Joe Roberts was injured and couldn't do the race. So he's been pulled in as a substitute driver, a relief driver, rider driver. And he put it on pole position and battled really hard to win, but ended up being second. Another podium, making 11 podiums now, Jorge. So it's a good story. The other story is Jake Dixon. He had a crash in free practice and wasn't that fit and qualified 12th.
Oh, poor
But
Jake.
he came through to 3rd. He was the quickest. He was catching the lead. He was catching everyone hand over fist. And he came out of the last corner on the penultimate lap, went across the finish line and sat up and waved at all his crew, thinking the race was over.
And then I saw it. Oh, I felt so bad for him. And then he obviously realised, and he went back down again, assumed position, but it was too late.
It was quite kind of him in a way, because he gave his teammate Izan Guevara his first ever podium. So at least his teammate was happy, even though Jake was gutted. Moto3 was, of course, won by David Alonso for another fantastic, battled, wonderful 6, 7, 8 bike race, despite the opening corner crash.
What's he going to do next year? Has he confirmed what he's doing?
Yeah, he's on Moto2. Yeah, he's in.
Okay.
Scott Ogden had an engine go, whereas Eddie O'Shea, his teammate in that team, came from 22nd to 16th. So Eddie had a good run. I have to mention, of course, there was a lot of sadness. Nobody was spraying champagne. Most of the riders were talking about Valencia. Because, of course, in the MotoGP, the whole grid is full of Spanish kids. They all grew up at Valencia. Valencia is the home of motorbikes. I think a lot of the teams are based in Valencia. So a lot of kids, even Alonso from Colombia was mentioning, because his team are all from Valencia and awful happenings going on there. A little bit of a big shadow over the whole of the weekend.
They've changed the final race now as well to Barcelona.
Yeah. Well, that's about the only positive out of it already, because that Valencia track, as I said last week, is a rubbish track for a final round of a Grand Prix season. So Barcelona is probably a better place for the final race. But no, real sadness from Valencia. Thoughts?
Isn't it awful? It's awful.
Bahrain, the last round of the World Endurance Championship, amazing spectacle, wonderful sights, fabulous cars, fabulous speed, fabulous overtaking, and about 10 people watching from the grandstands. I mean, I know Bahrain wants to pay the money and hold these races, but, promoters keep on giving in to the money world that we're living in now. And it was just almost sad that it was going on there and not at Spa or Silverstone or.
But what would you have had at Silverstone? What would you have had people-wise? 50,000 if you're lucky?
Yeah, at least 50. No, you get 50.
You think so?
Yeah. But in the olden days, Group C Brands Hatch, when I was racing there in 1979, I mean, it was just rammed. We had the most amazing end of the Group C. There was 6 or 7 manufacturers and 30 Group C cars. But the trouble is, World Endurance Championship, even 8 hours is a bit long for me. It's a long, long race. I always think 1,000 kilometres was the best distance, which is usually less than 6 hours. And so, 2 drivers could do that easily. You have to be an enthusiast to spectate. It's not a sort of big show like Formula One with the glitz and the glamour and the rock stars and, people going there for paddock club and drinking champagne. It's more for enthusiasts, real lovers, like Le Mans. Le Mans is the pinnacle, and Le Mans gets crowded out every year. But if you go to a European track or American track or a Japanese track with this field, you'll get a pretty good-sized crowd. And if they're all on their radios, they can listen into the commentary. You have to follow. It's not a simple show. Following, it's a long, long race. But it was a pretty good one, actually, in Bahrain, because Sebastian Buemi was leading early on in Toyota. They had to win to steal the manufacturer's crown from Porsche, who got more points at that stage. But he was punted into a spin, braking for turn 5, whatever it's called. And it is a problem in those prototypes, because they overtake the GTs. Then they go back in on the racing line to brake. Then, of course, they brake much quicker than a GT car can. So this Corvette ran into the back of him. You sort of blame him. What's that idiot doing in the GT3 car, smashing into the back of the race leader? There are times, it's like if you're on a motorway, you want to go for an exit and you pull across into the left lane in front of an articulated lorry and hit the brakes. The lorry will be hooting his horn very loudly because they can't slow as much as you can. That's a bit of the same with it. So boy, they went back down to 10th place, I think, after his spin. And they came back through and took the lead with about 20 minutes still to go. But they took the crown, the manufacturer's title, by just 2 points, winning the race, sharing his car with Brendan Hartley and Ryo Hirakawa. So good day for Toyota manufacturers. The driver's title already been pretty much settled, very safe by the Penske Porsche team of Laurent Vantour from Belgium, Kevin Estre from France, and André Lotter from Germany. But it was quite interesting. There's one little final tale at the end of a nice story for Peugeot, who, thanks for the fact that Ferrari used 2 more tyres than they should have done when heading for second place, they were given a 2-lap penalty for having 2 extra laps, which dropped them from second to 14th and last, which promoted Peugeot to their first ever podium in there. I still call it a bit of an ugly duckling. Of course, it came out grey, and its first colour, it was a grey colour, no wing on the back of it. And I thought, it's never going to work with no wing. But I've tried it. I've had engineers stick me out at Le Mans with no wings on the back. Doesn't work. Thin wing, up high, works. So that they got some reward. They've had a terrible, terrible first 3 years, or however many it is, Peugeot. So good for them. Podium for Peugeot. I won't call it ugly ducting again.
I'm just trying to find some attendance figures for this year for WEC, but it looks like the most, I'll forget them all, but Imola about 73,000, Spa 72,000. So yeah.
Is that the Sunday, or is that the 3-day?
That's a bit of a call, because it's the 3 days.
Is it a 3 day? It's a 3-day figure.
I think so, yeah. I think so.
That might be only 25,000 a day then.
Yeah. If that, yeah.
Who knows?
So 20,000, 20,000,
Please
10,000.
just tell us race day audience.
They don't want to because it's not
a smaller number.
punchy.
It's a smaller number.
And when you go on to the British Grand Prix, yes, we had 480,000 people over the weekend. No, you didn't, because many of the same people went every single day.
Oh. Anyway, so that was the World Endurance. It's a really enthusiastic sport. Looks fantastic, and if you want to follow it, it's very entertaining and absorbing to watch. The GT race is going on as well, which is always about 6 cars on the lead lap at the end. So there's plenty of racing to watch. It's one of those ones where you walk around the track. You go there and you feel, and you have a radio in your ear and you see what's going on.
A couple of pints in the sun.
A couple of pints. So then we head over to America, of course, for the penultimate time.
What was going on there? It was all a bit of controversy. I saw.
NASCAR. This is the last chance. So only 4 drivers could go through out of the 8 that had qualified. And Logano and Reddick were already through because they'd won races. Through on the points, arriving at, what's the name of the track? Martinsville, was Bell and Byron. Bell well in on the points in his Toyota, so he was almost guaranteed to get through, Timothy Bell, but not in. Needing to get through on points were Larson, Blaney, Elliott, Hamlin, big names, and one of them had to win through or get through on points. Anyway, early on, Timothy Bell had a spin, damaged his car, went a lap down. So all of a sudden, his 26 points advantage was disappearing because the other boys were getting stage points after stage 1 and stage 2. Anyway, it was 500 laps, a long old race at times 20 quicker. But at some stage, they all led. Larson led towards the end, but he was on old tyres. He'd almost got the lead by not pitting for fresh tyres under a safety car, gambling on, being able to held. Then first Elliott overtook him, his teammate, but then it was Hamlin. Not Hamlin, sorry, it was Blaney. Blaney came through from nowhere. He had put on new tyres, so he had the better, fresher tyres and slowly picked them all off to take the lead, to win through. So that means there are 3 drivers guaranteed to be in the finals: Logano, Reddick, and Blaney. So now there was only one more place on points alone. Larson didn't have enough. He finished 3rd. But the last few laps was this amazing thing going on. Because you're not allowed to have team orders in NASCAR in a way. So the Bahrain was now 1 point, right, 1 point ahead of Timothy Bell to take the points title to go through. But if he lost the place, they'd be equal on points. If he lost 2 places, he'd be -1. So this is happening every lap. But he eventually got 2 Chevrolet drivers behind him, side by side, blocking anybody else from taking, I think it was 6th or 7th place off of, I don't know which place he was in, it was about 6th or 7th. So now they showed all the radio transmissions to see if there was any orders, and it was, you're aware that you're catching, and it was like he's +1. Just told the drivers the situation, but didn't tell them to block. Meanwhile, Timothy Bell's made this amazing comeback, and he's cutting back through the field, and he's got up to about 18th. So if he overtook one more driver, he would overtake Bell, equal Bell. So that sort of, Bell lost 1. No, sorry, Bell gained 1, he'd get through, and if Byron lost 1. So it was that tense. And the last corner of the last lap, Bubba Wallace, who's a Toyota driver like Bell, suddenly started slowing, and he was 1 place in front of Bell. And apparently he said, I've got a puncture. I think I've got a puncture. So going into the last corner, turn 3, Bell just dives up the inside of Bubba. But he's going so quick, he virtually spun it. Then he slammed the wall. So now, in a bit of a panic, maybe looking back on the situation, he then floored it like the Melon Man. Do you remember the Melon Man going flat out?
Of course I do, yeah.
Yeah, it's the same circuit. And they've now banned wall riding. Wall riding is banned. But although he'd done the overtake and then hit the wall, he probably should. He then wall rode round. Stupidly, he didn't overtake anybody else, and probably didn't know that he didn't have to wall ride. If he'd backed off the throttle, he would still have finished in that position.
Oh no!
That would have made them equal on points. Equal now. They were both on 0-0. Bell would have gone through on previous tie-breaking situation. So we had to wait for 6 minutes watching the telly while the stewards went through all the radio things to see when it was cheating, and then had to decide that indeed the wall riding has been banned. And although he didn't overtake anybody else, because he wall rode and endangered the field, Bell was dropped out, and Byron goes through. So we now got one. There would have been no Chevys in the 4 if Byron hadn't have got through on that steward's decision. So we got 1 Toyota, Tyler Reddick in a Toyota, the 2 Penske Fords of Blaney and Logano, which were rubbish early season, are both through. Logano, of course, only got into the 8 because there was a disqualification ahead of him. So Logano, who shouldn't even be in there, is there. The guy that won the most races all year, Larson, isn't there. But this is the playoffs. This is NASCAR. This is drama. So now the top 4 go to Phoenix to decide who's going to be the champion. And the one that leads out of those 4 is the one that takes the crown. Good Otherwise, stuff. There's just only other racing international next week. There's a Super 4 finale at Suzuka, which I think we might get a report direct from Suzuka for Lovecars on the grid.
Indeed, we're gonna be there with A2RL, which is the Autonomous Racing League. They're doing a bit of they're doing something very cool. They're going to be racing. It's like a Super Formula car, which is very, very fast, probably faster second fastest to a Formula One car.
Yeah. I think they're quicker than Formula Twos.
Formula Two, but maybe IndyCar. But anyway, right up there. And a computer, AI car is going to try and beat Danny Kvyat in
the autonomous race. You've got another
head-to-head race.
We all saw that. We all saw that one on the telly in Abu Dhabi. It all went a bit chaos. But they're developing. They're developing fast. And there's one autonomous car against an autonomous car on the Saturday. I've looked, and then there's the Kvyat versus an autonomous car on the Sunday for a quick 20 minutes.
So we're going to be going with those guys, and then you're going to come and meet us the following week.
I'm coming down to have a look and have a drive.
I'm lining you up with a drive in Formula 3 car. So you got about 10 days to get your neck muscles and your.
Well, we'll be seeing you. So it's now 12. So it's 8 p.m. now in Tokyo. So you're not be able to go out and get drunk on Monday night, right? Because you've got to talk to us about 8 p.m., 7 p.m.
It'll be a pleasure.
Monday night.
Before we go, I want to say a belated happy birthday to you last week. And you had a good week because the Saints actually won football.
We won a game.
How young are you? How old are you?
Well, I like to follow others to show I'm quite young, because Bernie Eccleston's birthday was on the Monday and he's 94. Derek Bell was on the Thursday and he's 84. Or 83, and I had the birthday on the Wednesday. I'm 73, so I'm so much younger, So I'm looking at Derek, but as long as Derek's still going strong, I think, oh God, you Derek, keep going. It's funny because Derek and I had very similar career. He was always a bit better and got better results than me. We both went sort of single seat, a very brief Grand Prix career. His was longer than mine, and then into world sports cars, and of course then we ended up sharing cars. And it was also the birthday when we finished 4th in Mexico. In the World's Endurance Championship race in 1979, when Derek Bell and I shared a Porsche to finish 4th on my birthday.
Oh, nice. So your birthday. So other than Derek Bell, who was your favourite? I'm not saying he was your favourite, but who was your favourite co-driver other than Derek Bell?
Well, Elge, but he's not famous. We went to Japan together and had a lot of fun. We were the early pioneers of racing in Japan in the Dome Group C car, which is a bit of a dangerous machine, to be honest. But we went out to Japan together, had a lot of fun. So, I was a really talented driver that should have made Formula One, but didn't quite. Did a lot of Formula Two, won in Formula Two. But there you go.
Good stuff. So we'll see you next week from Japan, and the following week from Abu Dhabi. Maybe no, we'll be back by then.
Yes,
but we'll see you next week.
Bye all. Cheers.
Cheers.